I was coached by Gail when I got up here. The first thing I should do was take my watch off so that I would know how long I'd been talking. For those of you that were around here in, I think it was 2015, Dean Sanders talked for at least 30 minutes. I'm going to beat him tonight. Not really, not really. I would like to thank the Alumni Association. I don't really think I belong with some of the people that have been selected in the past. This is a pretty august group that they put together. And I hope that Randy has distributed the honorarium to all of the selection committee members that I gave him. You all understand that Gail and I live up in Wheaton, Illinois. That's pretty close to Chicago. And we also serve as election judges. So we know how to win elections up in Wheaton, Illinois. But I definitely want to thank, obviously, Gail, but John, Connie and Sam, Chris, Corky and Billy were involved. They did an excellent job in putting together a nomination. And when I read it, I thought that they had the wrong name on the top of the page, but it worked. Seriously, I can't imagine how blessed I am to be standing in front of you and having grown up in Arcola. You know, you don't get to choose who your parents are. And I think I wound up being pretty lucky to have the two parents that I did. I learned determination from Dad. Gail would describe it as intransigence when I don't agree with what her opinions are. And Mom was the kind of person who I don't think she ever flew off the handle. Her style was to listen to what the issue was, think it over, and then make a decision. So it was almost like it was a measured decision whenever she made up her mind. And the most important thing from the two of them was college was not an option. It was expected. And all three of us went to college, and we were all lucky enough to graduate. I think Randy's story is probably accurate. Chris is the only one that got a master's degree. Sam got a doctorate as a veterinary medicine, and I got a bachelor's degree. But I had an excellent education. And the other thing that you don't get is you don't get to grow up in a town like Arcola that has a school district like we have. There were excellent teachers when I was in grade school and high school. The four teachers that you saw on the slide from high school that were very influential, Kay Kleiss is one of them that's sitting here at our table. But Carol Dunn was my math teacher in high school. And the one thing that I learned from Carol Dunn is the right answer isn't enough. I can't tell you how many times we would be having a class and he would ask you what the answer was, and then he'd say, "Andy, how in the world did you get that answer?" He would challenge you on every answer that was presented in class because he wanted to make sure you knew how you got there. Second person that was very influential was Modesta Scott. You saw her up on the screen as one of the earlier honorees. I learned from her that government is very personal. Every one of us is touched one way or another by government, and it's not something that's abstract or in Washington, D.C. It's you and me. Bob Avery, who Randy quoted, and the story about driving their Falcon to pick up Beverly and Mark and Kelly for the basketball games is absolutely true. Bob didn't know that I had never driven a stick shift until he told me the first basketball game. I think I was a sophomore. I just got my driver's license. And he said, "Do you mind going over and picking up Bev and Mark and Kelly?" I said, well, I guess if you want me to. So I went over there. I fortunately didn't crash into anything, and I was able to back the car into the parking space that he had reserved behind the gymnasium there at the school. So from that time on, I was in charge of picking up the family. And last but not least is Kay Kleiss. Kay had a way of bringing science to life. I liked science when I was in school, but being in her classes was more than just turning the pages and doing the experiments and finishing the tests. There was one time in our chemistry class when she had teamed us up and we were supposed to do experiments. And Ed Cunningham and I were assigned to the same team, and we decided that we wanted to make carbon monoxide, not carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. And so we practiced a couple of times, and we did the experiment. We were standing up in front of the class. Those of you that went to school and know what the science lab looked like back then, we were in front of the class conducting our experiment. So the vessels are bubbling and the gas is rising, and I noticed out of the corner of my eye, back in the lab area, Kay is back there turning on every one of the exhaust fans. Now, I don't know whether she thought that we were mad scientists. I knew what we were doing, but I guess it never hurts to take precautions. Randy mentioned Dr. Roland Spaniel. I know Pat Monahan knows him. He was probably the most influential person that put me into information technology. He taught the classes, he ran the data center at Eastern, and he got me a job at the data center during my junior and senior year doing programming and tutoring the computer science students. And that was how I got involved with information technology, and it went from there. The last blessing that I've received is the lady in the striped dress back there. Gail would have you believe that she is Mother Teresa on earth, that she took me off the street, she saved me from eternal bachelorhood, and I guess I can't argue with that. I'm no longer a bachelor. I had my own standards. I was looking for a spouse who was rich and in poor health. Well, I think it was probably on our second date, I decided I was going to have to cross out the poor health part because she was obviously not in poor health. But this is probably not a good commentary on my business acumen. It took me until after we were married to figure out that she was not rich either. So I had to continue working, and I traveled for probably about 50 or 60% of the time. And at one point, we were out with some people, and they asked, "How long have you been married?" And I said, 15 years. And Gail says, "No, we've been married 15 years, but we've only lived together for 7. And she says, "You're always out of town when something goes wrong. You're always out of town when the possum lands into the window well and has to be removed, when the lightning hits the wellhead on the water pump." And so she did an awful lot to keep the household running while I was on the road. I'd like to conclude with a couple of quotes that I think are very appropriate for anybody who is as blessed as we are, and certainly it fits my situation. The one is from Robert Louis Beaupre. He's was a representative from Colorado during 2003 and 2007, and he wrote a book called A Return to Values: A Conservative Looks at His Party. So this is not going to be a political diatribe. Let me caution everybody. But his quote that I think is very appropriate for the environment here in Arcola is, education is a shared commitment between dedicated teachers, motivated students, and enthusiastic parents with high expectations. And that certainly applies to me. And the last quote, the second quote I'd like to make is Abraham Lincoln's, "The better part of one's life consists of his friendships." And that is certainly true. I will cherish the friendships here in Arcola till the day I die. Thank you.